Welcome back to the garage. It's time for another episode of Token Teardown. And if you're new here, this is Token Teardown, the show where we jack crypto projects up on the lift, shine a light underneath, and explain what's actually happening under the hood. Because when a project says it's powerful, we don't nod, we don't clap, we don't retweet the thread. We ask a better question. Are you talking Nissan GTR power, all-wheel drive, over-engineered, quietly dangerous? Or is this an old 240 with a body kit, big wing, loud exhaust, and nothing special once you look past the paint? And that matters today, because the machine on the lift is Epic. Epic says it's building infrastructure for real-world assets, real value, real rails, real utility. That's a serious claim. So the question isn't whether the story sounds good. The question is whether the machine underneath can actually carry the weight. And yes, we know. Price predictions. We'll get there. But before we talk numbers, returns, or upside, there's only one question that matters. Does Epic deserve a place inside your hard-earned wallet space? Or should this capital be parked in a different garage? Now, this teardown is a viewer request. So if you have a project you want on the lift, something you keep hearing about, something you don't fully understand, or something you think deserves a real inspection, drop it in the comments. We read them all. And if it belongs in the garage, we'll put it on the lift. Big shout out to Triple X for this one. White papers, on-chain checks, no shortcuts. That discipline is why these breakdowns are real. All right, gloves on, because before we talk performance, speed, or returns, we need to talk about who built this thing. In this garage, we don't trust slogans. We trust the people holding the wrenches. Epic traces back to Nick Rosner-Sass, the founder of Eternity Chain. Nick isn't anonymous. He didn't show up last cycle with a Discord and a dream. He's been building in crypto since the early Ethereum NFT era, long before real-world assets became a buzzword. Eternity didn't just talk. It shipped licensed NFTs, real artists, real brands, real users. You don't survive multiple market cycles by accident. You survive because you've already broken things, fixed them, and shipped again. On the technical side, Epic's engineering backbone is led by Janne Elonen. This isn't a marketing CTO. This is a protocol-level builder. Someone who understands how contracts fail, how chains bottleneck, and how systems break under real load. That pairing matters. Nick brings product vision and execution history. Janne brings engineering discipline and reality checks. This is not a hype shop. This is not ghosts behind avatars. It's a real crew with scars, experience, and ambition, now trying to build something heavier than anything they've done before. Which brings us to the real question. What exactly are they trying to build? Let's slow this down and make it simple. Epic is not a new Layer 1 trying to replace Ethereum. It's not a meme chain, and it's not an oracle. Epic is infrastructure. Its job is to help real-world value move on-chain without pretending laws, rules, and reality don't exist. Right now, most real-world assets live off-chain. Real estate, collectibles, contracts, payment rights. They're slow, paper-heavy, and locked behind middlemen. Crypto moves fast, but mostly moves digital-only things. Epic exists to connect those two worlds. Here's the mental model. Ethereum is the secure foundation, trusted, battle-tested, but expensive and congested. Epic builds on top of Ethereum, handling execution away from the main chain and settling results back to Ethereum for security. Ethereum is the engine block. Epic is the drivetrain that lets it pull weight. This system is built for structure, not chaos. No meme spam, no bot wars. No pretending everything is permissionless fantasy, just controlled execution for assets that actually matter. Epic isn't saying it solved real-world assets. It's saying we're building the plumbing so real-world assets can actually work on-chain. That's a much harder job. And once you understand that, the fuel system starts to make sense. Don't let crypto gurus confuse you. Tokenomics is just the fuel system. How much fuel exists, how fast it's released, and whether the engine actually burns it. Epic has a hard cap supply of 33.6 million tokens. No infinite minting, no surprise printing, no secret switch behind the dashboard. That's the full tank. Now, not all of that fuel is on the road at once. Some tokens circulate, some are locked, some are released gradually over time. That's normal. What matters is timing. If usage grows faster than unlocks, the engine absorbs it. If unlocks outpace usage, you feel pressure. Simple mechanics. And yes, Epic burns fuel. If you want to use the rails, you pay fuel. If value moves, fuel gets consumed. If nothing moves, fuel piles up. There's no magic here. Which brings us to the last mechanical question. How does this thing actually work under the hood? All right, now let's talk about what's actually happening under the hood. Because this is where most projects either hide behind buzzwords or lose people completely. Epic is built as infrastructure on top of Ethereum. Ethereum provides the security, the settlement, and the final source of truth. Epic builds a dedicated execution layer above it, designed specifically to move real-world value without clogging Ethereum's main road. That design choice has stayed consistent, but how it's implemented has evolved. Early on, the focus was simple: make sure the system worked. Assets could be created, moved, and settled reliably. Transactions anchored cleanly back to Ethereum, and nothing broke under basic load. Once that foundation was stable, upgrades shifted toward how efficiently the system handled real activity. Instead of every transaction fighting for space on Ethereum's base layer, Epic processes activity in its own execution environment. Assets are created, moved, and settled off the main chain, where execution is faster, cheaper, and more predictable. As usage patterns became clearer, upgrades improved. How transactions are batched, how execution costs stay consistent, and how settlement avoids sudden fee spikes. Once that activity is finalized, Epic anchors the result back to Ethereum. So Ethereum still secures everything. Epic just handles the movement. And over time, that movement has become smoother and more reliable. Think of Ethereum as the reinforced concrete foundation. Epic is the rail system built on top, and the upgrades have been about strengthening the rails, not repainting the station. This matters a lot for real-world assets. Real assets aren't simple tokens. They come with rules, ownership conditions, transfer restrictions, settlement requirements, and the need to evolve without breaking what already exists. Epic's tech stack has been upgraded to better support that structure. Assets on Epic aren't just minted and forgotten. They're created with defined logic, moved through controlled settlement paths, and designed with upgrade paths that don't reset ownership or history. That's critical because real-world assets change over time. Another area of improvement has been integration readiness. Upgrades have focused on making the system easier to plug into. Wallets, custody solutions, and external platforms without unpredictable behavior. Again, not flashy upgrades, but the kind that matter when other systems depend on yours. All of this explains why Epic doesn't chase raw transaction speed. It prioritizes predictable execution, because when you're moving real value, certainty matters more than flash. The system batches transactions, processes them efficiently, and settles them cleanly. No noise, no chaos, no unnecessary competition for block space. That's also why Epic feels quieter than other chains. This isn't built for hype cycles. It's built to work when nobody's watching. And once you understand that, the rest of the story starts to click. Epic isn't trying to be the fastest thing on the track. It's trying to be the thing that doesn't break when real-world value starts moving at scale. Now that we understand how the machine actually works and how it's been reinforced over time, the next question is simple. Is anyone using it yet? That's where we go next. Epic is not a mass market chain yet. Anyone telling you otherwise is lying. This is early stage infrastructure. Usage today shows up quietly. Builders testing rails, tokenization pilots, NFTs tied to real value, payment paths being exercised, integrations coming online behind the scenes. This is the boring phase. And in infrastructure, boring is usually where real progress happens. You don't judge Epic by Twitter volume or green candles on a random Tuesday. You judge it by whether builders stay, whether integrations expand, and whether the rails hold under load. Right now, Epic is being used, just not loudly. That's not a guarantee of success, but it is the correct phase for something this heavy, which means we now have to zoom out. Epic is not racing alone. This is the real-world asset lane, and it's crowded. On one side, you have bank-backed and TradFi-heavy networks, slow but deeply connected. Epic isn't trying to beat them at bureaucracy. It's trying to be more flexible and more crypto-native without ignoring regulation. Different racing line. On another part of the track, you've got narrow tokenization specialists. They go deep on one asset class and execute well. Epic is broader. That gives it flexibility and also raises execution risk. Then you've got general layer 1s and layer 2s pivoting into RWA because it became the narrative of the cycle. Most of them say, bring your assets here. Epic says, we'll build rails so those assets don't break everything else. That distinction matters, but only if Epic executes. This is a dangerous middle lane. Win it, and Epic matters. Lose it, and bigger players absorb the space. Which is why regulation and failure modes matter next. When you touch real-world assets, regulation isn't optional. This is the emissions test. The question isn't whether regulation is coming. It's already here. The question is whether this build can pass inspection. Epic is not an outlaw chain. It's not hiding. It's not pretending laws don't apply. It leans into structured assets, clear ownership, defined settlement paths, and enterprise-grade tooling. Epic does not custody assets. It doesn't hold your money. It doesn't issue guarantees. It provides rails. That separation reduces regulatory exposure compared to platforms that directly custody value. Does that eliminate risk? No, but it means Epic was designed with scrutiny in mind. Street legal, not a midnight drag racer. Which brings us to what can actually go wrong. Every machine has failure points. Epic is no different. Adoption risk is real. If pilots never scale, the engine idles. Competition risk is real. If bigger players lock up key lanes, execution alone won't save it. Ethereum dependency is real. Security comes with congestion risk, and execution discipline matters most of all. Infrastructure gets fewer second chances than consumer apps. Now, black swans. A black swan is not upside. A black swan is a disaster, a major hack, a contract exploit, a custody failure, or a regulatory action that breaks trust. In those moments, adoption freezes and timelines get pushed out. We don't plan for black swans, but we don't pretend they don't exist. With risks clear, we can finally run the numbers. All right, we're here. This is everyone's favorite part of the teardown, the part where we stop talking theory and start pressure testing reality. And before we do anything else, you need to know where this comes from. This section is built from the work of Lulu. Lulu is the head of technical analysis in the garage. We call her the queen of the charts. She doesn't do vibes. She doesn't do narratives. She doesn't do hopium. She works with numbers, structure, and market share. Everything you're about to hear is Lulu's math. I'm just reading it. So let's anchor this in reality first. Right now, Epic trades around 79 cents. Market cap is roughly $26 million. Total and max supply sit at 33.6 million Epic. And total crypto market cap today is about $3.1 trillion. That's the starting line. Not a forecast, not a dream. That's where we are. Now, Lulu asked a simple question. What does Epic look like if crypto matures? Not overnight, but over time. Into a $20 trillion asset class. Not hype, not tomorrow, just a long-term stress test. And she ran 4 scenarios. Scenario 1 keeps the same dominance. In this scenario, crypto grows from $3.1 trillion to $20 trillion. Epic does nothing special. No breakout narrative. No sudden institutional flood. No miracle. It simply keeps the same relative market share it has today. That's roughly a 6 to 7 times expansion with the broader market. Starting from 79 cents, that puts Epic in the range of $5 to $6. No fireworks, no collapse, just proportional growth. This is the base case. The engine runs, the rails work, the car moves with traffic. Scenario 2 adds a little traction. Now let's say Epic earns a little more lane space. Not domination, not a takeover, just better execution, more integrations, more real usage, and real-world assets actually moving on the rails. Nothing flashy. In Lulu's model, this looks like Epic capturing slightly more relevance as RWA transitions from pilots to production. In that scenario, Epic moves into the low single-digit billions in market cap over time. From a 79 cents starting price, that translates to roughly $20 to $30. This is Lulu's preferred scenario. Why? Because it doesn't require miracles. It just requires execution. Scenario 3, moonshot. Now we label this properly. This is the moonshot scenario. Everything goes right. Regulation clarifies instead of tightens. Institutions move faster than expected. Real-world asset adoption accelerates. And Epic is positioned exactly where the plumbing matters most. Perfect execution. Perfect timing. In that environment, Epic could justify a much larger market cap. From 79 cents, that puts price potential in the $40 to $50 range. This is not a base case. This is not a prediction. This is what happens if everything goes right. Scenario 4, Black Swan disaster case. Now we talk about the one nobody likes, but grown-ups always include. A black swan. And to be clear, a black swan is not upside. A black swan is a disaster scenario. Something breaks, a major hack, a contract exploit, a custody failure, or a regulatory action that destroys trust. In this scenario, even if the total crypto market grows to $20 trillion, Epic loses relevance, usage freezes, partners pause, adoption slips. And price does not follow the market up. In fact, it can go the opposite direction. That's not fear, that's reality. Infrastructure lives on trust, and trust breaks fast. Now, before you lose your mind, stop. Before you go and spend your entire paycheck, we need to tell you something. This is not financial advice. And yes, the head of technical analysis in the garage is a pig. 4 hooves, a tail, a snout for the charts. So come on, man, don't take financial advice from a pig. Do your own research. Read the docs. Check the unlocks. Watch real usage. Now, here's Lulu's final read, starting from a $26 million market cap, a 79 cent price, a 33.6 million max supply, and a $3.1 trillion crypto market today. $5 to $6 if Epic simply survives and holds share. $20 to $30 if execution earns traction. $40 to $50 only if everything goes right. And downside risk if a black swan hits. Even in a bigger market, that's the full picture. No hype, no emotion, just structure. All right, now that we've run the numbers, we can finally do what this show is built for, the final dyno. All right, now we dyno this thing. This is where we stop talking theory, stop talking scenarios, and put a number on the build. The dyno doesn't care about vibes. It doesn't care about Twitter. It doesn't care about what you hope happens. It only cares about what we inspected. So here's what we're scoring. The team, the tech, the fuel system, the regulatory posture, the competition, the execution risk, all of it. Epic's final dyno score, 7.4 out of 10. And here's exactly why. On the positive side, Epic is a real infrastructure attempt. This is not a meme coin. This is not vaporware. This is not a Discord-only roadmap. It's built for a serious lane, real-world assets, and it's designed with regulation in mind instead of pretending it doesn't exist. The supply is capped. The architecture makes sense, and the upgrades have been focused on stability and reliability, not chart pumps. That alone puts Epic above a huge chunk of this market. But we're not handing out nines today, because adoption is still early. This is still the boring phase. And infrastructure doesn't get credit until it's actually carrying weight. Competition is real. Big players with more capital and more distribution are running the same track. And execution has to stay clean. No sloppy upgrades, no broken integrations, no trust-breaking mistakes. Infrastructure doesn't get many second chances. So, here's the honest verdict. Epic is not an old 240 with a body kit, but it's also not yet a proven GTR. Right now, it's a tuned build worth watching. A machine that could earn its lane if execution continues and real-world value starts flowing. Or one that stalls quietly if adoption never moves past pilots. That's the dyno. No hype, no emotion, just the build. And remember, this is not financial advice. It's just the garage doing what we do. If you've got a project you want us to put on the lift, drop it in the comments. Smash the like, hit follow or subscribe, and share this with someone who still thinks every token is early. Engines hot, safety off. Let it rip.